Okay, we're standing in front of probably one of the oldest houses in Waterford. As you see, it's made of rubble stone, not the nice cut stone. So this is what they picked out of the fields. Its date sometime between 1740 and 1744. And if you can imagine, it was a freestanding two-story house. There was nothing else around it, either to the left or right. And this is where it started out. It was a so-called patent house because Lord Fairfax, who was proprietor and owned all these lands in Virginia, required that you were substantial enough to build an 18 by 20 house, and this is exactly what it is. So either an early German immigrant or an early Quaker built this. This was the center of life for the town of Waterford. Anything that happened in Waterford usually happened here at the tavern or at the hotel. So there are several entrances into our house, the Talbot Tavern. One is to my left, to your right, the arch house, which has an eased access that goes to the back of the house. And then these two doors, the green door and the red door are the entrances to the front of the house. The row here looks like a bunch of townhouses, but we know that it was built up and probably finished about early 1800s, 1810. This brick facade here is what Joseph Talbot pushed in between this house and the 1740s house. And so we added a story on both sides and added this bricked in area. And this is where Talbot had his tavern. Let's go in. So this was the main room of the early house. As you can see, the hearth and the timbers. This is where most of the work was done, where the family gathered. It was the floor at that time was dirt. These particular floors were quarried at the Bull Run Quarry here in Virginia at a later date than when the house was built. What you'll see is really two houses: the early house, the 1740s house, and then about 1800, a Quaker named Joseph Talbot decided that he was going to establish a tavern on this property. So what he did was he added a story to this house, which we'll see later. And behind us in this direction here, he slipped in a post and beam building that housed the tavern. This particular shop was a shoe shop and a butcher shop, actually, in the early 1800s. As you can see now, it is my workshop, my man cave. So as we go upstairs, you're going to see both of these houses and the relationship between them. Now, as I said, in 1740s, this was a freestanding house, a two-story house. This is the upper story of the house. And this wall was the back brick wall, which extended then the width of the house. The entrance to the house actually was through that wall there where now a house stands. But you can see again the very crude beams. The Quakers were very simple in terms of their requirements for homes. They hardly even cared about rounding off logs. So their focus was simple and neat, and something that could be made with native materials. So what you see here is the original second story of the house. Obviously then it was used mostly for sleeping and wasn't quite outfitted in terms of some of the federal things we have in this house now. Okay, we leave 1740 and we go to early 1800. When Joseph Talbot decided that he was going to establish a tavern, this part of the house was not existing, but he slipped it in between this house and the stone house next door. And this was the main tavern room of the Talbot Tavern. It was established as a tavern or ordinary in March 12th, 1810. The Leesburg Council gave Joseph Talbot the license to open an ordinary, which was a tavern, and I guess in modern day would be something like a B&B. So this was the main tavern room in which the town council met in 1815. The first Bank of Loudon was chartered in this room here. So this building and these sets of buildings that were called the tavern was essentially the center of activity of Waterford. It was where people met. It was where people did important business. And it was the largest room in Waterford at that time. It has 10 or 11 foot ceilings, and it was quite expansive. So in the early 1800s, this was actually quite a place. We have the original heart pine floors that were here in 1810. And you can see the tavern back door where you could escape from your wife if she came looking for you. We've sort of outfitted this in terms of early federal period, but it was quite a building. So we've seen the 1740, and about 60 years later, this structure was built. Now we'll go up one more floor, which has the bedrooms. And on this floor, when it was a hotel, at one time there were 5 rooms that were in the width of this building. And you'll see what they did to accommodate 5 rooms in a very small space. What they did was they actually hinged the doors so that this room, there used to be 2 rooms here, and they hinged the doors so that it wouldn't take up room and swing against a bed or something. So there were actually 5 rooms in this very short part of the building. And now we're upstairs of the original 1740s building. This floor was also built by Joseph Talbot as well as this here. So now let's look at the master bedroom, which is upstairs of the large room that we saw. So it's quite spacious. It also has the fireplace, and this was the room. This was one of the main rooms above the tavern room, and it was a hotel from actually 1810 to actually the early 1920s. When we purchased the place, the room had been chopped up into several small rooms. But as you can see, the main summer beam here, the additional walls were non-bearing. So what we decided to do was to open the place up for our master bedroom so that one could get cross ventilation and light between the 2 sides of the room. In Virginia, they only built houses 1 room wide because they needed ventilation in the summer and they needed light. And so we want to reflect more how this house was intended. This particular wall isolates the main bedroom from our master bath, which we constructed. And again, the original heart pine floors that were here in the early 1800s are still here, and they have wonderful patina. So this is what we did to modernize and to make a substantial master bath. So this isn't the end of it. We have one more floor. We also finished the attic. And the attic is usually where we're hiding in terms of our entertainment and other things we do, computers. So this is the upper floor of the Talbots, the infamous Talbots Tavern. By the way, the Quaker ladies didn't much like a tavern here in town because it produced several inebriated people, including Quakers, and they thought it should be shut down. Now this room is a hallway. This was part of our remodeling to separate a small bedroom from a hallway that goes upstairs, because in fact we did refinish the attic. Before the attic was refinished, this was a single bedroom, and one could walk by a guest in the bed and greet them good morning. So we thought that was probably not proper, so we had a wall put in here and French doors to isolate the bedroom. So we decided to finish the attic because it was sitting there not being used, and wonderful pine floors, and it has a wonderful view toward the back side of the house and into the gardens. So we decided this is where we would watch the Minnesota high school hockey tournament. And a wonderful view of the back. And the orientation of this house is really toward the back. It's very peaceful. and very quiet compared to any sort of street scene here in Waterford. The one important part of the yard here, first it's terraced. It was done by a mason back in the early 1900s, I guess, in terms of modernizing the walls. In the back is also a 25-acre open space, conservation easement space. So our backyard abuts a very nice space to walk dogs and play with your kids and things like that. So this is the attic. This is where we have our computers. This is where we have our entertainment. And typically in the winter, this is where we hide and do our work. We decided also, since we had a large attic above the Talbots Tavern space, that we would make a guest bedroom. And so this is it. We have a princess bed, about an 1840s Empire bed that we put up here. And we added also a bath up here for our guests. And one of the nice features of this particular room is the wonderful, again, view out the backside toward the backyard. So it's a very quiet, very peaceful, very nice guest room. And if you notice, I said that Talbot slipped this house in between our neighbor's house and the 1740s house. This is the exterior wall of our neighbor's. So in fact, he did slip it in. So that's the construction and that's the house. One thing we didn't show you was the kitchen. Now the kitchen was sort of unique in terms of it used to be a woodshed, and maybe you can see some of that there. But rather than to take space inside the house, we decided to do the kitchen here. It's a galley kitchen, 8 by 12, have wonderful Viking appliances and cherry cabinets. So it works very well. And also you have a view of the masonry brick wall out the back. But it's a wonderful space. Now, let's go out and look at the back. I said the orientation of this house, the peaceful part of this experience here in Waterford is really the back of the house. Two things. One is a wonderful terraced backyard that was done by a mason here in Waterford sometime in the 1930s. It was completed. And also it abuts a 25-acre conservation easement property, an open space easement. So the back of the house really opens up very nicely. So let's go look at the patio. We have, due to my wife's insistence, her electric company, a power generator here, a generator when the power goes off from Dominion Power. And we've used this quite a bit. So it's important in Waterford that you have backup power. Let's go up now. This is the patio. This is where we spend our summers. And let's go up on the walk and see what the backyard looks like. We planted most of the things like the boxwood in that because we didn't want our plants to use a lot of water. And water conservation here in Waterford or anywhere is important. So a lot of things that don't require maintenance, don't require additional watering have been done. A couple wonderful cherry trees here. So you want to contemplate life sitting on a bench underneath a flowering cherry tree. This is the place, if you can imagine it, in a few months. And the stone walk continues up until we come to the 25-acre conservation easement. Can only be used for agriculture in 3 days of the Waterford Fair. So it's accessible, it's walkable, and we know that there'll be no housing developments built behind us here. This was the old well, which was 150 feet deep, and when we started modernizing it, we needed more water, and so we have a well on the other side here, which is 750 feet deep. Yeah, wonderful views of the Blue Ridge Mountains in the background there. And so it's almost a world apart from the front-facing side of the house and Main Street. There are two accesses. The front door, which we saw. In fact, there are two doors in the front. And also the back here is eased. As this used to be the Talbots Tavern, there was also the back sidewalk. So let's take a stroll down here and I'll show you where this goes. This is our neighbor's house, which was part of the Talbots Tavern. And the gate here leads to the Arch House, which was where before the Civil War they would store arms. The Northerners did, and also it was our water supply. As you can see here, the Arch House then leads down to Main Street. So this is also an option in terms of going into our Talbot Tavern house. So out we come. And the quiet nature of being part of this community. So that's the construction and that's the house.